So welcome everyone. Hola chicos. Today I have a really special guest. This is Modja. He is joining us from
Yeah, I'm from Congo, Democratic Republic of Congo. That's right.
the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And I am going to let himself introduce himself to you. But the reason I've asked him to be on this particular episode is because I think he can, through his experience, can give you some really good insight on how you can become a better learner of languages. So for this episode, we're going to be talking about three different aspects. First, we're going to learn a little bit about who is Modja and why he's in this channel. Then we're going to explore why he has such an interest in the many languages that you'll find out he can speak. And the third aspect is he's going to leave you with some top tips to be better at learning languages. So let's get started with our first topic, and that is Modja, take it away. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Which is
I think I got cut off there.
yes, the connection got a bit messed up.
Yeah,
So you asked me to introduce myself, right?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah, so as Sana's mentioned, is Modja. I am a hyperpolyglot, which means I speak multiple languages. I speak eight languages, 4 of those at an advanced level. And I have a channel, a language learning channel, that's specifically designed to teach people how to learn languages, especially help people go from intermediate to advanced in their target languages.
Perfect. And so what is it that gave you this interest in learning languages? Because you know 8 languages, that's more than most people can say that they know. What is it about languages that made it so interesting for you to explore?
So some of the languages were learned just by virtue of being, in Africa, most people are multilingual. It's rare to find someone in Africa who only speaks one language.
That's true.
So there's certain languages we learned at home, like the local languages in Congo, Lingala, for example. I learned Lingala at home. I also learned French at home because it's Congo, we speak French. When I went to school, I learned English. So some of it just came from my environment, learning of certain languages. But when I really got interested in language learning was in university, in college. So I went to university at Pitzer College in California. And at that university, there was a time when I was feeling really low emotionally. My school, I wasn't doing so well at school, and I was just feeling depressed, feeling like I can't achieve anything and so on. I'm not capable. I don't have any potential, blah, blah, blah. All the negative self-talk. And so I was feeling like a loser. So I said to myself, what can I do to feel, I need to do something to feel like a winner. So I decided to set myself the challenge. I'm going to learn Spanish in 3 months and be able to speak it fluently. So that became the challenge. So I started at the start of the semester. I did that. And then I went to, and then I started attending Spanish class at university. And I was actually able to do it within 3 months. So at the start of the 3 months, I was not able to understand a single thing. I'd never learned Spanish before. We don't really do Spanish in Africa.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I put on like a YouTube video, a news video. So some lady was telling the news in Spanish, like some Latin American news channel. It was on YouTube. So I put it on, and her name was Annie Rubens. Not Annie Rubens. I've forgotten her name actually, but she would give the news in Spanish, and I had no idea what she was saying at the beginning, obviously, because I don't know the language.
Right.
And after 3 months, I could understand everything she was saying. So first I had the feeling of being a winner because the professors were in shock, right? How can you, sorry, just a moment. So my professors were in shock because they'd never seen anyone pick up the language so fast. So they were giving me all sorts of compliments. And I began to realize, okay, I do have potential. I can do something. I'm not someone who lacks discipline. But someone who lacks discipline would not be able to study as hard as I did to learn the languages as well as I did. And so that's where the interest began from, right? And I learned the value of 3 months, because in 3 months, before I never really valued time, but when I looked at the progress I was able to make in 3 months, I realized, oh my goodness, I can do pretty much anything.
Exactly.
And it's not even going to take necessarily that long. And that's when the passion for languages really kicked in.
That's really inspiring. And what made you decide to learn Spanish? Did you have a lot of Spanish speakers in California at the time that perhaps gave you that inspiration to learn Spanish?
Yes, we do have it in California. There's a lot of people from Latin America, especially from Mexico. So lots of Mexicans there. I don't remember why I chose Spanish specifically, but I think part of the reason was because there were a lot of Mexicans and Spanish speakers at the university. Most of the workers in the university were Latin American. So it would be very easy. Maybe if I'm walking, let's say in between classes, I could meet like, I don't know, maybe someone who works in the kitchen, or all the kitchens, pretty much all the janitors were Spanish speakers. I could just run into the janitor or a cook and be like, "Ah, hola," and then they start speaking, and then they'd be excited that I'm speaking Spanish, and yeah. So that's kind of how it started, yeah.
I'm sure they were very surprised as well. Somebody coming all the way from the continent of Africa and suddenly speaking Spanish to them.
Yes, yes. What they really liked was my pronunciation. They said they really liked my pronunciation. And this was not, before starting the class, I decided to watch a few videos and I practiced pronunciation. This was something I did automatically. I didn't know how important it was at the time. It was just, I was like, what's the first thing I can do? Oh yeah, let me learn how to pronounce correctly. So it turns out that many Americans typically don't put attention to pronunciation. So when Americans used to speak to them, they'd speak to them with, you could see that someone put no effort into accent or pronunciation.
Yeah.
So when they heard me speaking and they'd say, wow, you're pronouncing words well. And that gave me confidence. So I wanted to do more to impress them more. And it became a self-reinforcing loop.
Excellent, excellent. And what happened then because you were saying that you were feeling kind of low, you were at a low point. So did learning Spanish in 3 months help you get out of this low point that you were experiencing?
Oh yeah. So, I mean, I still had the same problems I had in other areas, but I had a bit of hope because I had just done something outstanding. Because I could see the teachers in shock. They were looking at me as if I'm some sort of extraterrestrial or something. So I knew I had done something really amazing and spectacular. So I was like, wow. It just, the confidence boost was tremendous.
Of course, I'm sure you surprised
But at the time, when I was learning Spanish, sorry?
I'm sure you surprised yourself as well.
Sorry, did you say something?
I was saying that you probably surprised not only your teachers, but yourself.
Yes, I mostly surprised myself, right, by doing something like that. And this was just the beginning for me. And at the time when I was learning Spanish, I did a lot of correct things in language learning, but unconsciously. So that's, in a sense, I was lucky because like starting with pronunciation is absolutely important. I didn't know. I just started pronunciation. And I also spoke a lot, but I didn't know that that's really very important. So I just got lucky in many ways to do the right things. And it's only later that I began, because now I teach how to learn a language. So I have to really think about the principles of language learning. And it's only now that I'm able to take the principles I use for language learning to learn anything. Improve my relationships, improve my capacity to learn chess. So it's really just transformed my entire life.
Wow. And what were you studying? What you were studying in California, was this career related to languages at all, or was it something completely different?
No, my bachelor's degree is in math.
Oh, okay.
So I was studying math, but it's America. So in America, they like you to you take your major subjects like it's mathematics, but you also are allowed, they also want you to take other non-math classes. And
Yeah,
so that's how I got the option of taking Spanish.
I see. Well, I guess also you could see that you could say that math is a language in itself.
It is a language, correct? Yeah, I think of a language as pretty much anything that allows me to read your mind. That's kind of how I think about language. So let's say I have a thought. I'm going to transform the thought into, let's say, words or an alphabet and store the thought in the alphabet or in the words. And then if you understand the language, you're going to listen to those sounds and you're going to extract the meaning that I stored in the sounds. So in essence, what you're doing is you're reading my mind.
Yeah.
And that's really what language does. And if you think about it, mathematics is exactly the same. I have an idea and I store it in an equation, some sort of formula. And if you understand the language, you look at the formula and the ideas, you decode the ideas that I stored. So you read my mathematical thoughts. And in that way, you're right. They're related in that sense. Yes, they're both languages.
And just like mathematics, there are certain patterns in language that we can anticipate and use to help us convey our meaning and our message.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is key. In math, it's all pattern recognition pretty much, and in language learning also. If we didn't have any patterns in a language, it's just we wouldn't. I mean, I don't even see how we'd be able to communicate. It's the regularity, the reliability of the language that makes communication possible. Yes, this is true.
Yes. So now let's get into the meaty part of the interview. Now that we know a little bit about you and how your interest in languages came about, could you please share with us your top tips as someone that is a polyglot, somebody that speaks 8 languages? What are your top tips for the people out there that are in the process of learning a new language or a couple new languages? What would you say are the top things that have helped you?
Okay, so I'll start with the first most important thing. This this is something I've discovered in language learning. It's the fundamental principles are the same for learning anything. And whenever you want to start any endeavor or learn anything, including language specifically, it's important to know why you're doing it. This is key. This is like at the top of the list. Why am I doing this? And it's important to have good reasons because learning a language is not easy. And if you don't have a good reason and things get hard, maybe your pronunciation is not going as well as you'd like. You're struggling with grammar. There's a lot of difficulty. It's been 1 month and you can't understand what people are saying and so on. When the frustrating moments come, if you don't have a good reason, you're going to quit. This is true for most people. Just no good reason, you're going to quit. There has to be a good reason why you're doing it. So this is really fundamental. First thing is reasons. Why am I doing this? And then once you have good reasons, the next thing is to think about is just what is the goal? Like, what are you trying to achieve in the language? That's also very important. So it's important to set clear targets. So do you want to get to an intermediate level? Are you okay with just communicating as a tourist? Or do you want to speak the language at let's like a native like level? So let's say, I think in the maybe C1 kind of level or above C1. It's important to have clear goals, because if you don't have clear goals, then how are you going to, you don't know what to do, what activities to do, what activities not to do. It becomes very difficult. So those are the first things before learning a language, actually. And if you're learning a language, now take a moment to think about, if you're already learning it, think about why you're doing it and goals in the language. If you can't figure out why you're doing it, maybe you should drop it. Do something that's meaningful to you, because time is really your life. So when you waste time on things that don't mean anything to you, you're not wasting time, you're wasting your life. So that's why it's important to know why. So you only focus on, if it's a language, you focus on it because it matters to you. You're investing your life in a language that matters. Okay, so those are two preliminary things with a language. So there is a third one, third idea when it comes to learning languages. And basically what I can say is that all learning of languages or anything is based in correcting mistakes. Whenever, in fact, let's put it this way, to improve at anything, at a language in particular, it means that you're making less mistakes than you used to make. So if you want to guarantee improvement in a language, just correct your mistakes. And if you have any activity that you're doing that does not involve error correction, it's not leading to any improvement. You need to can it, get rid of that activity. Mm-hmm. And there's many such activities that one can do. For example, let's say your goal is to speak a language. You want to be able to speak it, but you spend all of your time just listening. You never actually practice speaking. What's going to happen is if you've been listening to correct material, your ability to listen is going to improve. Mm-hmm. Right? Because in order, you see, you're practicing your listening. You're making listening mistakes. Oh, I don't understand this. And then you correct the mistakes. So you're practicing your listening. You're going to get better. But since you're not practicing speaking, you're not correcting speaking mistakes, you're not going to improve at all. Mm-hmm. So this is like a very powerful rule of thumb that I use with people in my community at Polyglot Principles. If they want to know whether a method works or not, first check if it involves error correction. If it doesn't, just forget about it. Right. Oops. Sorry, just a moment. Yeah. What did you say? Okay. So yeah, that's another important principle, which is just error correction. And then another really important principle of learning languages is something I call you need to do not try to walk before you know how to crawl. Okay. This is key. Yes. So, or another way to put it is, don't run if you can't walk. Right? It makes no sense to try to run. You're just not going to succeed. So it's very important. Whatever activity you're doing in language learning, you're improving your listening, whatever you're doing, make sure you use material that's in your sweet spot. The sweet spot is the spot where things are not too hard and not too easy. If something is too complicated, I'll give you a practical example. For example, I'm currently learning German, but so I've been learning it for about 8 to 9 months now. But at the beginning, I settled upon a strategy that was wrong. I was trying to improve my listening comprehension of German. So what I did at the beginning, when I didn't know anything, I decided to listen to success podcasts in German. Okay. The problem was that it's too complicated. I'm not able to say a single thing. I'm trying to listen to a success podcast in the language. My thinking was, because it's so hard and I'm forcing myself to listen to it, my brain will adapt and I'll learn faster. So that this was a theory I had, turned out to be wrong. Because what happened was, at the beginning, my mind was excited by this new language. Wow, all these sounds, wow. But then after a while, it became too complicated because the mind is trying to make sense of the environment. It's trying to make sense of what I'm hearing. The problem was, it was too complicated, so the mind couldn't make sense of it. So guess what it did? The mind quit. Instead, I'd put on the earphones trying to listen to a podcast, but instead of my mind focusing on the complicated German podcast, the mind would think about something else. Yeah. So maybe I'll start thinking about, yes, what's for dinner, what's going on, or my plans for the future. The mind just tuned out completely. And so here I had violated the principle of running before walking. Mm-hmm. So what I decided to do instead, after learning my mistake, was to reduce the complexity of what I was listening to. So I started by just watching cartoons in the language. And after a while, I became adept at understanding cartoons and I increased the difficulty. Mm-hmm. Now, the same podcast that I used to tune out, now I can listen and understand everything that they're able to say. So
Wow.
this is absolutely key. Right? It's activities have to be not too easy and not too hard. They have to be in the sweet spot.
And that sweet spot, of course, varies for each individual depending on their level of the language.
Yes, and the sweet spot varies for each individual depending on like how maybe you experience with other languages, and also the sweet spot for you changes over time.
Mm-hmm.
For example, when you start a language, being able to say, my name is Senora Susana, that's very hard. That's in your sweet spot. You really have to struggle to say it. After a while, now you can say it. So it's now in your comfort zone.
Right.
Now, if you keep talking about basic stuff, you're going to get bored. Once you feel boredom, that's a sign. So you want to increase it because your sweet spot has gone up.
Mm-hmm.
And then you work in your sweet spot and then you master it. And then now you get comfortable and bored. That's a sign. Hey, make it harder. Right? And also you can do the reverse. If something is feeling too hard, you're like, oh no, it's in my overwhelm zone. It's too overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be hard-headed and say, no, I got to push through. That's one way to do it, but you don't need to do it that way. You could also just say, okay, it's too hard. Let me make it easy. And so you keep adjusting over time. And before and after a while, things that were hard before become easy. So
it must feel good to have that realization, like what happened to you with the podcast, that initially you started with that and then that was too complicated, but after watching the cartoons, you went back to the podcast, and then to realize that you were able to finally understand, that must make you also feel some sense of accomplishment and pride because you're acquiring the language.
Yes, absolutely. It's that's what I was saying about like having some goals. One of the goals I had set for myself was I want to be able to understand this podcast. Mm-hmm. So I had made a projection, understand it in like 3 months, but it took 9 months to understand it. Although it's good to be able to get a podcast now, like you're saying, like, oh wow, just a few months ago, less than a year ago, I couldn't understand anything here. And now look at me, I understand what they're saying, laugh at some of the jokes and so on. That's very encouraging feeling also.
Yeah, I can imagine. So you've talked.
So that's another principle. I have many principles of language learning. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that you have talked about these in your channel, which I'll put the description I'll put the link on the description so that the audience that is watching this episode and this channel can also visit your channel, because I know that you also go into not just the principles, but you go in depth into each one of them by explaining them a little bit deeper. Yeah. So far you've told us 4 things that help with learning languages, starting with why, and setting clear goals, making sure that you're correcting your mistakes as a way to guarantee improvement, and to find that sweet spot where you're not challenging yourself too much where it's overwhelming, but not too little so that it's boring.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So those are all principles. We could always go into more if you like. There's a particular document I wrote called The 5 Enemies of Language Learning. So it outlined the 5 mistakes which guarantee that one will not improve in a language. So something else that was on that list was automation. This is also very important. Mm-hmm. You want to make grammar, especially grammar and grammar structures in the language, you want to make them automatic. Mm-hmm. Think about, for example, right now, you and I are fluent speakers of English. As I'm speaking to you right now, I am not thinking about how to conjugate words in the present tense. I'm not thinking about grammar rules and none of that. Right. Why am I able to just use these things? Let's put it this way. Why am I able to make grammatically correct sentences without thinking about it? Uh-huh. The reason is that I have made these grammar structures automatic at some point in the past. And this is key. If I don't have to think about the present tense and I don't have to think about the future tense or the past tense, then that frees me up. If I can do those things automatically, now I have the opportunity to think about other stuff when speaking.
Mm-hmm.
So a way to think about it is, for example, in things like in a sport like basketball, let's say, or a fighting sport, people punching each other. At the beginning, you can't fight so well. There is no, you can't read the movements of your opponent. You need to learn that first. Once it becomes automatic and ingrained, now that frees you up to think about higher level stuff. So you could think about strategy. There's once I heard a fighter describing that they were able to they were able to observe the blinking during a fight, observe the blinking of their opponent's eyes.
Wow.
So that when the opponent's eyes closed, he says at that moment the opponent was blind, and so he'd give the kick then. So the opponent would just find himself on the ground not having seen a kick. And he says the reason he was able to focus on such a tiny detail as the eye movement was because the rest of the fighting details were automatic to him. They were internalized. So this is absolutely important if you want to really improve, especially if you're a beginner in a language. Here are some things that will lead to dramatic improvement just on the spot in a week or two. Just take the present tense and first of all, learn the rules for the present tense, and then do a lot of exercises in the present tense until you can do it automatically. If you do that, there'll just be a huge jump in your understanding. Then do that for the future tense and do that for the past tense, and now you'd be around intermediate level. So that is another absolutely important principle, which is automation.
And you're saying that the automation of grammar can happen with exercises, yeah?
Oh yes, I have a process for making grammar automatic, and basically, it's pretty straightforward. The method for it. Let's say I'm trying to learn a tense like the present tense. The first thing I'm going to do is to learn the rules of it. Maybe how to, like, let's say the rules of conjugation. Maybe the basic verbs like I am, you are, we are, whatever. So I learned the basic rules, the basic rules for how to use that grammar structure.
Okay.
And then I do a lot of exercises. So some people make the mistake of just watching videos on YouTube about how to use a certain, let's say, grammar, how to do the present tense. I know somebody like this actually, and there's really no improvement in their skill. And this is one of the reasons why, because they just watch videos on how to use a grammar structure, and then they think, oh, now I know the present tense. And there's no improvement. It has to be ingrained and automatic. So how do you do that? You learn the rules. That's step one. Step two is you do a lot of exercises that apply that rule. And you keep doing those exercises until you're able to do them without thinking. Just until it becomes, let's say if you're doing a grammar exercise, if out of 10 exercises, you're getting like 8 or 9 correct consistently, that's a sign that you've mastered this structure.
Right.
And if you do that, you'll notice that you'll find yourself automatically using it when speaking. When people use it, you automatically understand what they're saying, and it will just free you up. You'll just notice the huge boost, especially at the beginning. It gets a little tricky when you're at the middle or advanced levels.
Okay, and what would you say to someone that says, well, Modja, the problem that I have in particular is that I find grammatical exercises extremely boring. I find that I go into that state of mind that you were mentioning before where my brain just tunes out and I don't pay attention to it. I just want to get it over with because I find them very boring. What would you respond to that?
Yes. Okay, so you can do without learning grammar explicitly. So basically we're saying in order to speak a language, the grammar has to become automatic. That's absolutely necessary. Now, you could make grammar automatic consciously or unconsciously. Think about children, for example, in their native language. You could find a kid who's like maybe 10 years old, 6 years old. He speaks his language with proper grammar, never attended a grammar class or any of that stuff. But if you hear them speak, you know that the grammar structure is automatic. They've made it's been automated also. But so here they've automated the structure through repeated exposure and usage of the language. So if you do that over time, you can also, you can internalize the grammar rules unconsciously. That is also possible. And we see it with kids, it definitely can be done. So if you really hate grammar, then you're going to have to rely on this approach of just using the language until the grammar becomes ingrained. But of course, there's a price to pay for that. If you do that, then it will take you longer.
Right.
If you have to learn the grammar through trial and error, just massive exposure, it might, I don't know, maybe, let's say it might take you 3 months or 2 months to learn the present tense. We don't know. But if you study, let's say with my system for learning the present tense, in 1 week, you got it. So it's up to you. It's a give and take. There are pros and cons.
I see. So it seems that you have to invest this effort at the beginning, but then it pays off because the results are come much faster.
Yes. Also pertaining to people who think that it's who think of grammar as boring, maybe it's also, maybe they're probably thinking about the back in the school days. In the school system, if you're learning a foreign language, you are perhaps forced to learn grammar that you felt was meaningless to you, or you didn't feel like you really needed it. So that's part of the reason. Probably it's memories from school that make you hate grammar. So the good approach to grammar is this, just to learn stuff when you need them. So for example, I'll give you a good kind of a good idea. Let's look at vocabulary, for example.
Okay.
One approach to learning vocabulary is to get a vocabulary list and memorize the words on the list. This is hard because some of the words you probably don't even need them. It's kind of hard to do. But imagine this instead. You're trying to speak to somebody and you're looking for the word and you just can't find it. How do you say house in Spanish? How do you say it? How do you say it? And then suddenly someone tells, oh, it's casa. Now you're very happy to learn the word because it's very useful to you. So in this case, vocabulary becomes fun because you're learning only the words that you need. So you could also use this approach with grammar. Just start speaking the language, and then you will find that you're always consistently struggling with talking about things that happen in the future. You always have trouble talking about the future. Enough of this frustration would lead you to be glad. You'll probably be like rubbing your hands, excited to learn the future, because then finally I can talk mistake-free about things that happen in the future. So this.
Okay, thank you.
Another way to think about it.
I wanted us to go back a little bit to one of the first tips that you gave us. You said that it was really important to start with why and to have a really clear reason on why you're learning a language. And you talked about having good reasons to learn a language. Could you give us a couple of examples of what good reasons to learn a language are versus bad reasons?
Okay, so for example, my reason for learning German is that I run a language learning channel and I need to keep practicing. I need to keep learning German in order to be able to teach language learning effectively. That, for example, is a good reason. Or and another part is, hey, I'm going to study in Germany next year. So I need to learn German. Those are all good reasons to do it. A good reason is going to be a reason that means something to you. Some reasons mean something to you and some don't. You really have to check your motivations. For example, when I was in school, sometimes let's say I'd have discipline problems and I wouldn't be able to, let's say, do my assignment or something like don't do my homework, something this extreme. And so I tried different thoughts to motivate me. One of the thoughts I tried was, oh, wow, let me think about my parents. They've paid all this money and I'm wasting their money. I'm letting them down. So some people get motivated by thoughts like that. But I realized that thought, I mean, I care about people, but thinking that I'm going to let people down does not motivate me at all. Nothing like that. However, I noticed when I thought about my dreams and how maybe this will help me to achieve my dreams, that motivated me. So the reason, oh yeah, this is my dream. For example, for me, the reason I'm doing this because this is my dream, that means something to me. It will get me up in the morning, keep going. But, oh yeah, you know, many people will be disappointed if you don't do it. But for somebody else, that can be, there are people who will do more for others than they will for themselves. So for them, if you tell them, oh yeah, do it for yourself, they're like, yeah, but you're like, do it for your family. You're like,
Mm-hmm.
that's meaningful to them. So you
Mm-hmm.
got to find your own meaningful answers,
That's
meaningful reasons,
interesting.
right?
So you need
They vary from person to person.
there's a degree of self-awareness that you need to know in order to be able to learn something and keep up with that effort that learning carries with it. Because it's, if you are really vested in learning something and you really want to get better at something, you do have to put in an effort, and that requires motivation. And keeping that motivation
Yes.
is up to the individual. And without knowing
Yes.
what it is in you that will keep that motivation going, you could lose steam. I think a lot of people, they encounter this where they start with a lot of motivation and they want to put a lot of effort and they have all these great intentions, but then suddenly they just forget or their motivation is lost. Do you think this could be because they don't know themselves well enough to know how to keep themselves motivated, perhaps?
Yeah, that could be it. There's many reasons why people stop being motivated.
Mm-hmm.
One of the easiest one is they run before walking.
Mm.
That's a simple reason to become demotivated. You do things, you take on too much too quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and then you start like I actually I wrote a document. I made a video about the different types of practice, and I talked about there's something called a comfortable practice. You're in your comfort zone,
Mm-hmm.
which means you're learning zip, and then there is repulsive practice. This is the kind of practice that is so hard that it repels you. For
Okay.
example, let's say you don't really run much, and then I tell you, oh yeah, you gotta train for the marathon. So we tell you for this week, Monday to Sunday, we are going to run 16 hours a day. Right. Maybe you see you're already repelled before you
No,
even
thank
start.
you.
Right. This kind of repulsive practice will kill your motivation really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are demotivated for that simple reason.
Mm-hmm.
They take on too much too quickly. The wiser thing to do is to take on, actually, this is interesting. They tell you to set the bar high. So I'm telling you to set the bar low. Okay? So start below your ability. If you can run for 10 minutes, run for 1 minute.
Okay.
You're not going to resist running for 1 minute, and then you keep incrementing it. And then as you, like, the success of doing something gives you the more motivation to do again next time. And then you get bored and you want to make it harder and harder. And
Right.
and that's the best. That's one reason why people become demotivated.
Mm-hmm.
But another reason is, like we're saying before, they just like there's these things I refer. There's a concept I have called quitting tactics. A quitting tactic is the technique your mind uses to make you quit something. So one of the quitting tactics is to question your reason for doing something.
Okay.
If you're doing something really hard and it's frustrating, your mind will come up with a question: why are you doing this?
Right.
And if you don't have a good answer to that question, you quit then. So this is also another, but there's several reasons for it.
Okay. Thank you, Modja. I think this has been a really good introduction into what people can expect when they visit your channel, because from what I've seen, you have lots of different episodes where you touch upon the different principles. You also talk about mistakes to avoid and how to become a better, not just like you mentioned, a better language learner, but a better learner in general. So a lot of these principles are applicable to many aspects of life, like you had said. And I really want to thank you for joining us today and for giving your time to answer our questions and improve our learning abilities. So I'm inviting my, my audience members to visit your channel and to check out your videos, because you have a lot of important and interesting tips that you can share, some of which we've seen today, but today we just touched the surface of it. So if any of this made sense to you and you want to dive a little bit deeper, please go on to Modja's channel and visit his channel. You can subscribe and that way give him more subscribers as well.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It's been a lot of fun discussing this stuff with you. Oh yeah, and we also, I think I interviewed you on my channel. So if people want to know your thoughts about language learning, they can also check them out on the channel.
Yeah, that's right. Thank you for remembering to mention that. Yeah, you can also check out the interview that Modja did to me. I think it was about a week ago, where we talked about some of the ideas that I have in language teaching and learning. And one thing that I want to point out that the two of us have in common, and I think this is what makes us good teachers, is that we are also learners. I think those two go hand in hand, being a teacher and a learner. How can you be a teacher, a good teacher, if you're not learning something new? So Modja is living.
Or if you don't know how to learn.
Exactly. So we, as teachers, we need to become better learners so that we can share our methodologies with our students and therefore help them out as well. Okay, thank you, Modja, for being here. And I look forward to
thanks a lot.
To seeing more episodes in your channel. And I hope you also enjoy some of the episodes I'll be posting in the near future.